the Tennis IQ podcast. I'm Brian Lomax.
And I'm Josh Berger. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the concept of time and how by both looking behind and looking ahead, we can really both find perspective in time and be able to um, you know learn from that perspective, but also be able to look ahead and be able to sort of plan out that time in more of a productive way. And some of the thought for this topic for this episode actually came from a section from a book called "Train Your Brain Like an Olympian" from Jean-Francois Menard. A book a lot about how to use different sports psychology techniques in the workplace, and he works with different sorts of athletes. He also works with Cirque du Soleil, and just from using these different sports psychology techniques across different domains, the book has a lot to do with applying these techniques to somebody's work. And there was a section where he was talking about a bike ride that he was doing. And I'll read a bit of this section. I think it'll be a nice starting point, and then we can dive a little bit into this topic. So here's the quote. "When cycling, we always look ahead. We forget that we're only seeing half the landscape. Behind us is another reality, a completely different perspective," the wise man continued. "The trip won't be easy. There will be moments where you'll be dead tired. Your brain will start thinking about the distance left to ride, and you'll want to quit. When this moment comes, stop, get off your bike, and look back. The satisfaction you'll get from seeing how far you've already come will give you the extra energy to continue." So this was from a story from an actual bike ride he did somewhere out in Europe. And just through reading this, I felt like there was a lot of overlap in terms of what athletes tend to experience. Athletes are working on their game. They're making progress. They're moving in the right direction. But inevitably, they hit a roadblock. Something gets in their way. Could be a match that doesn't go as well. Could be a slump. Could be an injury. Things happen inevitably. And I think it's really key in moments like that to be able to have some sort of process like he talks about, to be able to stop, look back, and and find that perspective to be able to understand how far you've actually come. So I think we can sort of talk about this piece in terms of being able to look back metaphorically, right? Find that perspective, and then also maybe taking a bit of a different approach to look forward and maybe plan out or how we want, think about how we want to approach the upcoming miles. But Brian, I wanted to see, some of your thoughts on the topic to get things started.
So the example from the book is obviously, as you said, Josh, it's a very literal example. And cycling, running, sort of sports where we're covering a distance, one can actually stop, turn around, and look back and maybe see some cool stuff about how far they've come. I think from a tennis perspective, it becomes more of a figurative type of, or an imagination type of thing. And but in both cases, if we go back to like what he said in the end of that selection, it's really giving him the energy to continue on. Because I think when you have like something that is time-based or distance-based, you can get stuck with, I kind of want this to be over, or, just a few more minutes. Or, I was actually talking to a figure skater the other day, and we're talking about her long program. And at certain points in that program, she's just sort of like, I just want this to be over. And those sort of thoughts, what do? They drop us out of the present, and we start rushing. And we could do that in tennis too, because tennis, although we're obviously stationary more or less within the court, we're not traveling distances. There's a long journey from the beginning of the match to winning 2 sets. And if we let this sort of feeling of, I just kind of want this to be over, and we drop out of the present, then we tend to not approach what we're going to do in a very good manner. I think it's also good to look at this from a career perspective, which I think maybe that's where you were also going, Josh, is um, we can look back and see, yeah, how far we have come over the last 3 months, the last 6 months. But I think it takes a conscious choice about what you will use from your past to help fuel the present. Because we could also, and this might be more of a default way of approaching it, we could also look at all of the losses and the failures and I'm not as good as I think I should be. Or, I think another time that we get focused on some of this, Josh, is maybe we've hit a plateau. Why am I not improving anymore? And so sometimes we use time as a tool to not feel good about ourselves. And I think what the author is talking about here is let's use time as a tool to fuel what we want to do in the present, to really give you, I think, the confidence to know that you can handle that challenge in front of you. You've handled many challenges in the past. And in fact, one thing we could ask listeners to do right now, Josh, is write down 5 or 10 accomplishments in tennis that you're proud of. And then after you do that, examine that list and then note what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome to achieve that or accomplish that milestone. What were, who were some of the people that helped you along the way? They're probably still around. What were some of the virtues that were really helpful to overcome some of your challenges to get there? And when you look back at the past in that way, Josh, I think that it gives you this sort of self-efficacy that whatever I'm doing right now, I can do it. And it really does provide that fuel for the present moment that maybe we can reduce the doubt. Maybe we can remain optimistic and continue to pursue our goals and our milestones with hope, knowing we can do it, knowing there's a path forward. Again, I think the running or the cycling piece is nice because there's a road. They kind of know what the destination is. Doesn't mean it's easy. In tennis, the road may not be so obvious, but there is one. So can we follow that road wherever it goes, knowing that from our past, we've done hard things. We can continue to do hard things. It's just sort of our minds maybe playing some tricks on us, trying to protect us from the uncertainty of life. But we've handled that in the past. So can we use now the past as a positive influence and energizer for what we want to do right now? And I think this is a really important perspective to bring because it's so easy to look at your past and compare yourself to others and feel bad and maybe lose hope. But the truly best are always using their past as fuel for the present.
Absolutely. And I think the suggestion to look at, 5 or 10 things that you're really proud of, right? Write them down and think about the steps that we're taking to get there. Think about what you overcame to get there. I think that's really important advice because I think by doing that, it helps you understand really how far you've come. It helps you understand everything you've had to do to get where you are, right? And I think it helps you not take it for granted. Because it's really easy to sort of go through our lives or go through our tennis journeys day to day and forget about it. Forget about, the fact that wherever we are, whatever point we're at, is not easy. There are a lot of people wishing they could be at the point that you're at, right? A lot of people who dream about that. A lot of people who are, multiple steps behind that working towards it. So I think if we can sort of take a step back, zoom out, it's a lot easier to be able to gain that perspective, to be able to, give ourselves credit for how far we've come. Um, I think there's a quote I've heard recently, which I've liked, which is it's tough to read the label from inside of the bottle, right? If you're in the middle of it, it's hard to really get that perspective and really see or feel, I guess, the what you're in the middle of. But when you can take a step back, and sometimes I think it can be helpful talking with somebody about this. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a family member. Sometimes when you can get that outside perspective, they can help you see how far you've come, help you see the progress. They remember pieces of your story that maybe you aren't focusing on or forgot about. So I think yeah, for this piece about being able to look back and find that perspective, I think it helps us, yeah, really understand how far we've come, because in sort of the day to day, it often doesn't feel that way, right? We're working to make improvements, and there's some days of practice where it feels like we're really moving in the right direction. There's others where we don't, or maybe we feel like we're taking a step back, or we're not playing our best, or we're getting frustrated. And it's the same in matches, right? There's some matches where it's like, okay, that's my game. That's how I'm trying to play, right? Or that was a great win. And then there's other matches where maybe it feels like I can't believe I lost to that person, or this match was way too close and I won it, but it should have been more lopsided. So in the day to day, there's always countless ups and downs. So I think when we can sort of step out of that day to day, step out of those you know just endless, countless ups and downs that we experience, we're able to sort of see the trend of things. I think I've maybe said this before, but um, one comparison I often think about is actually to the stock market, right? If we think about the stock market, right, on a particular day, you can look at the different indexes, and, one of them is up by 0.7%, or one of them is up by 1.5%, right? And there's a lot of emotion on that particular day. Wow, things are really great, things are moving in the right direction. Or oppositely, right, when they're down, there's a lot of fear, a lot of panic, a lot of worry about what could happen. But the next day it's either up or down, and same with the next day. And really, people tend to forget, by and large, about what happened on one particular day. What tends to be important is more the trend. Can we look at the past 3 months of the market and see, okay, what direction are things going in? And I think the same can be said of our tennis journey, or just our progress in anything. Instead of being so focused on the day to day, can we look at the trend? Can we look at those past 3 months, past 6 months, past year, or more? And can we see the direction things are going in? Can we see the improvements? Can we see the progress? Can we give ourselves credit for that? And, and be grateful that we're in the position that we are, which I think, a little bit later, we start to think about sort of looking forward and maybe planning out that time looking forward. I think it's a lot easier to do that once we've done that first step and found that perspective, given ourselves credit for the journey that we've already taken.
And I think, when we look back, one thing I'm thinking about here is we want to look back again, use the past as energy and fuel for the present, because, and Carlos Alcaraz is a great example of this in the Roland Garros final. There's no value in stopping believing in yourself. Zero value. You will not achieve anything through that. And of course, our minds are often trying to trick us into maybe doing that very thing to protect our self-esteem or our self-image, or prevent us feeling uncomfortable emotions, all of those things. But in a world in which we're trying to become our best, and we're trying to do our best to perform well and to win, losing hope, losing belief, doubting yourself has no value. So we use time here, the past, as inspiration, as a tool, again, to energize our belief and our confidence that we've done hard things and we can do it again. And that's the message you need in the present very often when you're facing a challenge or you're facing a plateau in whatever you're doing with your skills. So if we shift Josh now to using the future to also inform the present, to me, we've discussed a lot about purpose, and we've talked about potentially adopting the goal of becoming the best player that you can becoming the best person that you can become, because that'll help you be a better competitor. And to inform the present, it can be useful to have a vision of that person in the future and almost think about, is there something I could do right now that would bring that version of me to fruition, that would make it more likely? In essence, is there something I could do that it would almost be a gift to my future self? Now, we could make this like super easy, Josh, and not about tennis, but we could say, all right, let's say you had the choice of eating a donut or a salad. Okay. Which one would be a better gift to your future self? That idealized or self-actualized version that you would like to become. Yes, the donut might be very delicious in the present moment, sort of a hedonic pleasure, but is it the best thing for your future self? Or will your future self, like, because if you have donuts every day, your future self is not going to necessarily appreciate that. But if you're really taking care, making good choices throughout, then we're really prioritizing that. So when we think about our future self, it can really help us make better decisions in the present moment. It could even be, and I've used this a lot with athletes, this is not necessarily a future self piece, but I like to fast forward to the end of a tournament or the end of a competition. And I say, or ask the player, let's say it's Sunday night and you're reflecting back on the event. What could you do that would make you proud and personally satisfied with the experience? And then we talk about those behaviors, because we can't obviously control the winning of a tournament or even playing great, but you can make serious strides in terms of making yourself proud of what you've done and being satisfied with that. And so that's also a future version of yourself, or using the future as a tool to inform what you want to do in the present. I want to make myself proud. So that means I'm going to fight for the entire match. I'm going to play with a great attitude. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to follow my routines and rituals throughout, because that's what I want to say to my coach or my mental performance coach on Sunday night when I'm reflecting back. Don't want to say, yeah, I lost belief, I started acting badly. That's not keeping a version of yourself in the future in mind. That's falling kind of prey to the circumstances of the moment. We all know that life is hard and tennis is hard. The struggle is to master yourself in such a way that you can be proud of the effort and that you can learn something. So I think this is another way to use time as a tool, time as a potentially a superpower here, to again inform what we want to do in the present, such that we're proud of ourselves or we're giving a gift to our future self.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think being able to look ahead in that way is really valuable. And I will ask sort of I often ask a similar question to what you asked, where, I'll say, when we talk next, right? If you couldn't mention anything about the results, winning, losing, scores, UTRs, et cetera, what do you want to be able to say about the performance, right? And then it tends to be very process based, right? Well, I played my game, right? I went for my shots. I played my A game. I played my best version of my game, right? Mentally, I was using my routine. I was resetting. I was breathing. My self talk was helping me. I prepared well for matches. I stretched well. I did mentally and physically everything I needed to do leading up to the match, during the match, after. And I think when people can take the time to look ahead in that way, I think it leads to much more of an intentional approach during the match, more intentional, more deliberate about how they want to go about it, right? Because it's easy to sort of fall into more of a default focus and focus on winning and results and expectations, right? I should be winning this match. This should be easy. I should be beating this person by this score. Or expectations the other way that maybe somebody is a stronger player and that they don't think that they can beat them. So it's easy to fall into that trap, I'll say, of sort of more of a default state. But I think if we can, if we can be intentional, look ahead, and and go into things, whether it's more short term or more long term, with more of that deliberate approach, I think it makes a huge difference, right? So whether that's, let's say, going into a tournament and saying, okay, this is what I want to achieve in this tournament, not result wise, right? Not I want to win the tournament, but more, okay, this is how I want to be. These are the behaviors or the actions or the mentally and physically, the way I want to be going about things. But also long term, right? If I think you started touching on this a little bit, but I think we can look further, right? We can look to a year, right? What type of player do I want to be in a year? And what does that player, need to do today in order to get a one step closer to that, right? What is that player? How does that player act? How does that player play? How fit are they? What does that person from a year from now look like, act like? How do they go about things? Or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or whatever it may be. But can we look ahead a little further, be really clear about that, and then the more clear we can be about that, then it can be a lot easier to think about the day-to-day steps and think about just getting one step closer to that. And I think it's, rather than trying to be perfect, right? Rather than saying, okay, uh, I want to be here in 3 years, and that means I need to win this next tournament, and I need to improve my UTR by a point within the next few months, or whatever it is. I think it can lead us to more of a process based approach in terms of, okay, I need to go about things in this way, right? I need to be, working on my serve outside of practice for, a few extra times a week, and being, specific about what that looks like. Or I need to work on my fitness in a certain way, or I need to play in more tournaments, or I need to work on my mental game in certain ways. But I think the more specific we can be about that vision looking ahead, it can be, it makes it so much easier to take those steps today, because we have that clarity about where we're heading and where we want to head.
I think you mentioned this earlier, Josh. We talked about a best self visualization or meditation in a previous episode, and the whole idea is to kind of go into your mind, close your eyes, relax, and try to visualize sitting down with a version of yourself in the future, a version of yourself that has done everything you wanted to do. They are who exactly you want to be in 2 years, 5 years. And then to have a conversation with that person in your mind, and really try to tap into some of the wisdom that you really have within you, but you may not always act on it, but that person can share with you. And to think about, well, what were some of the things that they did to get to where they are? What were some of the things that they didn't do, or maybe stopped doing, to help get to where they are? And maybe some other advice that you can get. I think there's also, like, when you do this visualization and you kind of sit down with this future version of yourself who has done everything you've wanted to do, there's some energy there that, like, oh, I can do it. I did it. So again, informing maybe some more energy that I have the ability to do this within me. And the nice thing about that visualization or meditation is that you can do that at any time. You know, in my experience with it, each time I do it, there's a little bit of something different that comes up in terms of the advice I get. And it's not always the same. So I think that's kind of cool because we're never the same person anyway, right? Day to day to day, we're constantly changing. So it makes sense that if you do this meditation or visualization multiple times, some of the things that come up will also change because your life circumstances are changing. So yeah, I think we can definitely look forward, Josh, to that more actualized version of ourselves and using that person as inspiration for what we want to do, use that as energy for what we want to do right now. Because to perform our best, the more that we're in the present, the better, right? We're talking about using time as a tool here, but when we're actually in the performance, we're using time as a tool to energize our focus on what we're doing right now, such that we can maintain positivity, optimism, belief, but we're also making good decisions for the performance and for our future selves. So yeah, we've got the past, we've got the present, we've got the future. Can we use these in really positive ways such that we're always staying focused and bringing the right virtues and other attributes such that we can perform our best when we need to?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think by being able to be really clear about that, it becomes so much, yeah, so much clearer about what needs to be done today, what virtues, what characteristics we need to embody, right? And then maybe there can be a process, and I think it's helpful when there is some sort of process to reflect on that, right? Maybe it's journaling, right? Maybe it's some sort of a daily practice where we're able to. It doesn't need to be long, but we're able to reflect on the direction that things are going in. Okay, how was today? Did I embody those characteristics, those values, those virtues of that person that I'm heading towards, that person that I strive to be in 3 years, 5 years, whatever the time frame is? You know, did I take one step towards that today? And I will add that that is a lot more controllable, right? Being in a certain way, is more about the decisions that you make today rather than outcomes and results. It's not, did I win my match today? You know, did I win the point game at practice? Right? Did I, it's not just result based. It really is more about, yeah, the controllable factors, the effort, the attitude, the use of mental skills, it's more about those controllable pieces rather than too result focused. So I think, yeah, I think it's a really valuable exercise or thought experiment to be able to look ahead in that way, be really clear about, what those values and virtues are, and then, be able to in some way measure or reflect on that progress that you're making towards those virtues on a daily basis.
So I think, as we wrap this up, Josh, time as a tool, time as a potential positive superpower, have people reflect on the past. What are some things that you've accomplished? What obstacles did you overcome to accomplish those things? Other challenges. Use that to inform your present. Then think about the future, who you want to be, what makes you proud, and use that to inform your future. Any other, any last thoughts as we wrap?
No, I think it's I wouldn't say I have any real last thoughts. I mean, I think it can be a helpful way to help somebody get unstuck, right? When they're in a
Mhm.
little bit of a rut, when things aren't going so well, when the last match or last day of practice wasn't the best, or just had an injury, just had a slump, being able to take a step back, remove ourselves from just what's happened right now or just what's happened today and look back, right? And in the same way, look forward. And we talked about some specific ways to do that. I think can be really helpful. But alternatively, um, I think it can be really useful. Maybe if somebody's not stuck in the same way, but is looking to, you know, continue to strive, continue to get better, and looking towards the future, having some of those specific values, some of those specific steps that need to be taken to really focus on today. So again, I think time can be used in either way. Where either we're stepping out of today, looking towards the past and the future, or we're using time in sort of an opposite way by really focusing on today, trying to make progress today towards some of those future goals and some of that, that future self that we are trying to take steps towards really becoming.
So great discussion on the use of time. Obviously, we always want to be performing our best in the present, but let's use the past and the future to fuel that. So thank you, Josh. That's our show for today. Thank you all for listening. For more on today's episode, please check out the show notes. If you have any feedback or questions for the two of us, please email us at tennisiqpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the content that Josh and I discuss on the show, please rate and review the podcast so other tennis enthusiasts can find it more easily. Additionally, to be notified of new episodes, please subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice, including YouTube. And you can also check us out on Instagram. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon in our next episode.